here today with our good friend Bob Ream. Bob Ream is a legend, racing legend in Arizona. This series is called Arizona Drag Racing Legends, and most people I know that went on to do other things in racing started in drag racing, and they started, at a young age. And over the years, I know Bob has been very involved with people with drag cars and build engines and such. But Bob, how did your interest in racing start?
Let's see, we tried to build a go-kart, didn't work out very well, so I went to the go-kart races at Maryville Shopping Center in 1962, watched Jimmy Bryan race, and pretty soon the neighbor kid had a go-kart, and I was the only one big enough to push him off, and so Chuck Lynn is the one that got me started in this stuff. I'm going to blame it on him. So, fast forward, turned 16, take over Mom and Dad's 54 Oldsmobile, go out to Beeline, but we still go to Manzanita after Beeline, and then go Cruise Central afterwards.
It was a typical Saturday weekend in Phoenix.
It was Saturday,
So
yeah.
you grew up in Glendale.
From Glendale, yep. Moved there in '59.
Where are you originally from?
Minnesota, and then graduated from Unit 1, graduated from Glendale High in '64. Was in the first class at GU, Glendale Community College, 19th in Maryland. Didn't quite get out of there. Got a lot of classes in, but whatever. And that was my professional education. And then we started hanging around Chuck.
I was going to ask you about Glendale.
Okay.
I know from mutual friends that Glendale, not many high schools in the valley back then. So Glendale was the big high school out west. And but there's a lot of people you went to school with that were before, during, and after that were car guys. You remember some of your classmates' names that were?
Well, Kenny Fulcher, of course, Jerry Miller, of course, and my goodness, we had a stack of them. Marty Robbins was part of the deal. He used to race NASCAR, but you went to Glendale. Trying to think of other guys.
Trip?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, some Trip guy?
Some guy named Trip Shoemake. He and I and Dennis Meekum had drafting class together.
Dennis Meekum.
And I'm going, oh man, hey Dennis, I'm working for your dad I was a lot boy in Meekum Pontiac for a while, Meekum Rambler, new and used cars.
I delivered his newspaper for a while.
Yeah.
The Weekly American.
Yes.
I did it for 3 weeks, and I didn't know they even hired me. I never got paid.
Oh, I'm not saying anything. My dad was his treasurer at the newspaper.
Yeah.
But yeah, great time in Glendale. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But 1964, after I graduated, Dave Bateman, another Glendale graduate, a racer, we're down on Central. We're walking out of Bob's Big Boy. He says, hey, I know those two guys over there. I'm going to introduce you. Introduced me to a guy named Chuck Forsty and Ed Smith, who had just gotten to town a little before that or whatever. And that's where I met those guys. And we started, Chuck said something about, I told him about my Oldsmobile. I wanted a low gear hold on it. He said, well, I can do that. So I went over to his house, and we just ended up being fast friends, and he was my mentor the rest of my life.
You served in the military, or did you?
Yeah. Went to Chuck got me a job at Valley Dodge first, working on cars, my first professional job, and then got July, Chuck's birthday, my first day, was 65. Got drafted February 66. So when I left, Chuck says, how old are you when you get back? I'm going to start a hot rod shop. Cool. I'll be back. 2 years.
So while you were gone,
Well, it's gone. Chuck
you
started
said Army?
Yeah, Action Army. And I got 2 points higher in electronics than I did mechanical on my aptitude test. So thought I'd be in the motor pool. Yeah, infantry radio repair. So I'm a draftee. They send me to Fort Benning, Georgia for 3 months, not 2 months, for training. And I go back to my home company and they go, we need a bunch of guys in Germany. You interested? It's 1965, 66. There's a lot going on in Vietnam. Says, yeah, I'll go over. So I went to Germany for a year and a half.
That was it.
Yeah.
How did you keep up with your racing passion or car passion while you were in the Army?
My buddy Chuck Glenn, guys of Willie's that I knew about when I got out of basic training, came home for that week. He's got a picture in the Army News, little Willie's racing at Beeline Dragway. And whatever I could come up with. I heard about Hank Arnold being killed in '67, Army Times.
Hank Arnold, famous
Yeah,
sprint car racer.
Twister.
The Twister car.
Yeah, one of my heroes. So we're watching. That's the only racing stuff I could get other than I did buy Drag News. Had it sent to me. Wasn't real timely getting to Germany, but
It wasn't weekly. It was more like last month.
yeah,
Yeah.
last month. But kept my drag racing stuff up and keep track of see who's doing what.
So you're the whole time you think about what kind of car you wanted to go racing when you could race, or
Yeah,
were you
well-
formulating your idea?
Olds 442. Yeah, I was going to come home and have an Olds with 442 and go drag racing.
And then what happened?
Got home and went back to Manzanita again, more than Beeline, and still had that needle in the arm. Needed methanol and dirt.
Like a little dirt in your wound, so
Yeah, worked out really well.
just rub some dirt in it. You hurt yourself, rub a little dirt on it.
Yeah, worked out really well.
So over the years, you raced it,
Yeah, but still went to Beeline afterwards. Went to Mel Larson's. Had a Volkswagen. I raced that.
the Bug.
Yeah, 67. But
Had a lot of fun.
yeah, had to make it a lot bigger cylinders, and had Jerry Miller build an intake manifold for me at Chuck's before I was working there, and put a 500 Holly on it, a 1600 cc Volkswagen.
Was the seat moved back at all?
Yeah, had plenty of room. It was great.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So I first remember you. I was into drag racing, and of course I would go out to Manzanita, and I knew you. I knew of you when you worked for at Chuck's. A lot of people talked about your skills and your talents of doing things, and helping with their problems and stuff, and quite the guy with tuning cars, and your ability with carburation. I think the big thing at one time in Phoenix was if you got to go drag racing, circle track racing, if you're gonna run methanol, you had to have Bob Ream build you a methanol carburetor.
Oh yeah.
And
I started that deal, and a few other things.
they seem to have a higher resale value if it was a Ream carburetor.
Heck yeah.
And then and of course I was in a speed shop, working different speed shops, but people wanted to keep their quadrajets,
Yeah.
and you were the quadrajet guy, and you could do stuff with a quadrajet, which later in drag racing, the quadrajet in a lot of the stock classes they had to stay with that carburetor.
Yeah.
And that modification you made, amazing how great,
Make a
we
lot-
call them a quadrajunk.
Make a lot of horsepower with them. And I started putting them on everything. We won a Trippy Shoemake's Volkswagen, turbocharged Volkswagen. We put a quadrajet on his. Between the two of us, it worked just fine. Because you go to the dunes and it wouldn't sputter and screw around with like a Holly or AFB with it. It was just perfect.
So you're always tinkering. So I kind of got ahead of it myself, but you got back from the Army, and did Chuck tell you, did you get a job with working with Chuck, or would you?
No, went back to Valley Dodge.
Okay.
Worked there for another 2 years. And then I got that phone call from Chuck. Can I come over and talk to you tonight? Trippy came in this morning, says I'm not coming back after lunch because I'm going racing with Dickie Harrell. I love that quote.
And what a great story that was
Yeah.
too, yeah.
But yeah, went to work for Chuck, and my whole life expanded and got so much better.
What did you initially do at Chuck's? What was your first?
Tune-ups.
Okay.
I was a tune-up guy, and pretty soon after, I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks, I'd walk up to Chuck, go, "You need an appointment book." He says, "Mechanics don't have appointments. Doctors have appointments." I says, "Okay, whatever you want to do, but I'm going to be dead in a month if we don't get it."
Dr. Bob says you need a.
We need appointments. And it worked out perfect. And my good, that business just thrived.
The Chuck's became the complete go-to hands-on car shop.
Yeah, it really.
A to Z, they did it all.
He expanded the machine shop a lot right after I got there, and it just never stopped.
Remember some of the machinists that worked there over the years?
Bob the Blaze Hayes, spectacular man. He, we kept in touch. I haven't talked to him in a couple of years, but he was up in Reno last, chatted. Wayne Rohrbig, my goodness, Ed Ross, on and on. Just great machinists.
And they cast hundreds or
Yeah.
or tens even.
Kenny Fulcher and Robbie Dale. My goodness.
So you work with a lot of great people.
Unbelievable people, because Chuck always got the best out of all of us. He made us all better.
And then it happened. You became a driver at Manzanita.
Yep.
How did that come about?
Borrowed $400 from Chuck Glenn, and I bought a complete race car on a trailer with spare stuff, with everything except fuel injection. Had a magneto, motor, everything.
So was it a sprint car or was it a?
It was a sprint car, but it was a modified.
Okay.
It was in that class, and let it sit for a year. And then Chuck says, "Bring it down here. Let's fix it. Let's put it together." I put it together, raced it for a year, and had a great time with it. And then Chuck says, or Stan Johnston, one of Chuck's customers, he was done with drag racing. He says, "How about you and I build a car together?" So we did. We had no plans. We had a couple 20-foot links of metal that came in, and no plans. Charles Davis would come by every night at Chuck's. We'd start building the car. Put it down on the floor and started welding it together. And won the main event second week out.
And that was super modified?
Super modified.
What was the drivetrain? What was the power?
Chuck sponsored us with one of the first 377s, 400 block with 350 crank. Hank the Crank made spacers of the 400 bearings. He bore them out, so he put the 350 bearing on top of that, or in the center of it. And Hank the Crank did the crank and rods. It was flawless. Ran the dickens out of it. Like I said, we won the main event second week out.
You're basically sold somewhat of a newbie to the racing?
Yeah, the circle track. I always wanted to. I got a chance to.
And then it was like, no going back.
No going back. Went out the drags to help Chuck with his Corvette once. Went one class, going middle eliminator, I think it was. That's easy enough. Back to Manzanita.
And then you built a car.
Yeah,
In the super modified division, which in the day was my favorite, because they were appeared to be more, quotation mark, affordable than definitely a sprint car.
Yeah, anyway.
They had common parts, they had truck burns in them, they had self-starting,
Yeah.
and they had the wings long before, they were the wing cars before we ever saw a wing sprint car
Yeah.
at Manzanita. And the people you raced with were pretty fantastic.
I started the same year as Ronnie Schumann and Leland McSpadden, my claim to fame. They went on. They did a little better than I did.
They went on and did something pretty well.
But they traveled a lot.
Yeah. But you were more like your job and everything, you kind of didn't really Did you race anywhere else that you?
Oh, yeah.
Where was your favorite place?
We'd go, well, in the state, we'd go to Tucson, Globe, Winkleman, a couple different places.
But being the super modified and kind of being more of a regional class, super modified in other parts of the country for something completely different.
Yeah.
So you're kind of limited where you could race the car?
They were pretty close over in Albuquerque and El Paso, Las Cruces. We went over there a couple times. I raced Stanley's car 2 years, and he raced it, so Chuck built me a car, a Gary Stanton car. Used the same motor, same 377. And we went over to Las Cruces. Chuck came with me, and it was a whole family deal. All the wives and kids, everybody came over, and ran second in a real huge show that they had. Probably had 60, 70 cars there. Well, there was some new tires McCreary came up with. Hope they work. And ran second. Knocked on a rear bumper. Got George Bischoff won it. Beat on his bumper a couple of times.
Couldn't quite knock her on.
I don't want to knock him out of the way.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
You and how long did you race actually in the seat?
But almost 10 years, but only real steady for 6 years.
But hard, steady.
Oh yeah.
You were a fixture.
5 times in a weekend, like Memorial Day
Right.
weekend. 5 straight nights between Tucson, Globe, and Manzanita.
You're bit by the bug big. Do you ever drive any other type of circle track cars, or?
Drove stock cars a couple times for a gentleman, and I never worked so hard in my life. And like I said, I have told a lot of people, it's like making love with your clothes on going down the back straightaway. It was so slow compared to the open wheel car.
If you found a car you liked, you stuck with it. You weren't like a Jerry Miller, get a software or anything, and be a natural and everything, right?
I wish.
Yeah. It's you did well. So you moved on. You have a son who's in racing.
Yep.
You still racing, or do you finally give it up?
No, he's still racing. He started in 1991 as a driver for a couple gentlemen, and he won his 13th race, I believe, and he hasn't stopped. Now he's an owner, but he's won almost 70 main events.
Sprint cars now.
69 sprint car main events. Won one championship, ran second, and I don't know how many. Just having fun. Now he brings in ringer drivers to drive his Wing 360 car. And he's done very well with that program.
He's a chip off the old block.
He's done well, yes. Very proud of him. Mechanically and everything, he's just done a perfect job.
Racing.
He's a hell of a driver.
Deep in your family. So, you worked for Chuck for quite a long time. Then you went off, and it was time to, Chuck had a lot of people over the years he trained that went on and did other things.
And we just had that discussion, and I heard the line that I heard so many times from other people. Let's make today your last day. Okay. It was a Friday, and I was going to Maui in a couple days anyways. It was good. But we were still friends. No hard feelings. It was that time. He knew that things could get better for me.
And then for a while you had B&R Automotive.
Yeah, 17 years.
That was a while.
Yeah, and the fuel injection thing really blossomed. I got
your side. Was that a case where your side business got in the way of your main business?
Yeah. I got fuel injection. I got introduced to the Carroll Shelby Corporation, and I built fuel injection for them. Drunken lunch in November '99, 2000. I had one in his booth at Barrett Jackson. 2 months.
So, Imagine Engineering. Injection. Excuse me.
Yep.
And that's really predicated another shift in your direction and.
Yeah. It's sold, as of today, it's sold 338 of them, way over $2 million worth. And, I've been for a sideline, and now I'm doing Hillborn conversions. The Hillborn, Alcon, Kinsler, Enderley, mechanical fuel injection for the hot rods, because people want that vintage look under the hood of their hot rods. So I've been doing those. I did I've done 17 or 18 of those this year. And I've got 7 of them going right now.
You also, still doing a lot of tuning and other things for people. And
Cutting that back. I haven't got time for all of it. The manufacturing is sort of taking over.
do you travel much still? Because you do travel to tune cars.
Yes, I check my phone and Beverly has me going somewhere. The tuning, I do most of it online. I've done one tuning trip, one in the last 3 years, where I used to do it a lot.
It's amazing what the world of the internet enables you to do, to talk to a car remotely and tune it. And
Yeah, I do a lot of tuning for Gary Stanton at his engine place, and then do a lot of his customers, their vehicles online.
you've done a lot, and I think any of us that have been involved with race cars, the performance aftermarket, none of us can actually say I set out to do that.
No.
You really had no idea. I mean, I like to joke with people, that all the things I've done, I still don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. It's just like, it's just odd, this, how well this whole industry can be to people who really, such as yourself, they go out.
It has been spectacular.
What would you like to be remembered for?
Honesty.
I think you've been pretty much there.
Honesty and love for my fellow human beings. I'm going to give you a hug today. Just be ready.
Bob, we appreciate you being here. We came together, while you're here, is we did a video for our friend Chuck Forsty, and you're part of the ensemble of people that, told the story, and we really appreciate you being here to do that. Your story is great, not only circle track, but I think anybody who's really been hardcore racing in Arizona, they know who you are. And I travel a lot in my business, and you're not just known in Arizona, you're known around the country, and that's something I'm very proud of. Thank you very much for being here. You're an Arizona drag racing legend, and much a legend in Arizona, and we're really proud to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.